And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Sliding down to SC off. Bring in SC off. It's orange!
R45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? We don't need any more of these.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another broadcast. We're bringing you the full stack of Ship 24 and Booster 7 this afternoon. It's getting very exciting down at Starbase with the FAA license published just yesterday, and we have a certain Chris B in the comms box. How you doing, Chris?
Oh, hello. Yes, they've let me on one of these streams, and we've timed that very well because the lift is taking place right now. So it's exciting times. It's the final stack ahead of launch.
And alongside Chris and myself, we also have an Alex who was bringing us the license yesterday. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm doing great. I'm just really excited to finally see this lift happening because it's the final time, hopefully, before that historic launch, hopefully also on Monday.
And I am Ryan Caton, hosting you through the next few hours, however long this lift takes. It's approaching 3 o'clock in the afternoon in South Texas, and the chopsticks have been kind of getting hooked up. Chris, do you kind of have a timeline of what we've been seeing over the last kind of 24 hours?
Yeah, they've been really preparing towards this now. I think the FAA was the key thing. Just getting that approval, they know they can go for Monday's launch, and then obviously they kicked in their what's called a processing flow, which is towards launch, and this is where we're seeing the FTS being readied, which we saw pretty much right after the FAA's release. It was kind of funny. It's almost like they were waiting for it. And then they pulled the FTS, got it ready, and now they've got into preparations for the lift. The lift will be for full stack, and then they'll just do some mating checks. And then all being well, by Monday, we'll be ready for a propellant load. So it's all on target. We're going to see things we've seen before, but this time, not just for a test, this time for an actual launch.
And I should probably just mention before I forget, in the background operating this stream this afternoon, we have a Kevin and we also have a Patrick. Musical Wolves hitting it off straight away, saying the next lift will be liftoff. Well, Alex, that's the plan, isn't it?
Exactly. Hopefully, we'll see, cross our fingers. On Monday, we shall see this thing lift off under its own power.
And Timothy Wood asking in chat, if you have a question at NASASpaceflight, pop it in chat. We'll do our best to answer. Do they have a NOTAM for Hawaii? Can they get it before the launch attempt on Monday? Now, Alex, you've been doing a little bit of a Tweety birds with the different NOTMARs and NOTAMs. So what do they need in the Pacific region for a potential re-entry of Ship 24?
So far, I haven't really seen like a NOTAM for Hawaii, but we have seen NOTMARs. So NOTAMs are notices to our mission, basically for folks on the air. Let's put it that way, right? and then the NOTMARs are for folks on the ocean, notices to mariners, basically. So those have gone out, but the NOTAMs haven't. And I'm not sure if they're gonna have to deploy those. It will certainly be a big area to cover, though, because the re-entry area of a Starship is going to be huge. So, yeah.
And a interesting question here coming, looking very far into the future, Chris. Outdoorsman Show asking, when could we see a crew access arm on this tower? Or do you think it could go on the Florida tower?
You know what? That's a great question, because I personally think the way that Elon has set this up, and he said this at the last time he did an overview, that Starbase will be for development rockets. They'll be doing a lot of their testing, their technologies there. I don't think we may see crew launches from there. I'm going to put that on a whim because I don't know for sure. But what we do know is that the 39A tower, that will be a crewed launch tower. So that's where we think we'll see the crew access arm being installed. And that makes perfect sense because the HLS missions will be launching from there for an absolute fact. The Kennedy Space Centers, that'll become their kind of like their flagship launch center. Maybe 49 will be built with 2 towers, and that'll be more kind of industrious, like the tankers and things like that. But I think Starbase with its 1 tower, I think we're looking at 6 launches a year at the current rate of their permits. So that's where they'll probably max out. They may be able to realign that some more, but I think it will be dedicated towards uncrewed launches at Starbase.
Just hearing a bit of a police siren in the background there. And Elite's official is asking, what odds do you think RUDs will occur? Each person's opinion. What's your favourite thing about Earth? And many other questions in here as well. So sticking on the first one there, what odds do you think the Starship will not reach re-entry, Alex?
Oh, I think there's very, very low possibilities. But again, I will be very, very happy if it reaches that point. Like if it goes into through the re-entry, that will be, oh my god, quite a spectacular, yeah, quite a show, I will say, yeah.
And Chris, I know you've been a little bit pessimistic on this. What's your opinion on it?
Yeah, by the way, the ship is actually being raised right now, so we're watching it being raised. But my pessimistic option is not necessarily negative. It's something which relates to the fact that it is the first time this vehicle's ever launched. It's not like Falcon Heavy, because that had the experience base at least of Falcon 9. I know the center core is different than the 2 side boosters, and it's a complicated vehicle, especially for staging, but there was always that historical knowledge about the Merlins flying and things like that. So this is where it's a completely new ball game. And I would be just happy if this vehicle clears a tower, gets some downrange, and if it gets the max Q, that's where I say, great, that's a success. Anything after that's a bonus. So I wouldn't want to go as far as thinking about the re-entry part of things. I just want to see the rocket lift off, get some good first stage ascent, and anything else after that's a bonus. That's where I think it'll happen. I also think it won't launch first time, and I got absolutely ripped by it on Twitter because everyone's going, oh no, I think there's a good chance of first time. I personally think there'll be scrubs. I'll set expectations accordingly because, again, we're talking about 33 Raptors at 90% rate thrust for 6 seconds before they go to launch commit. That's asking a lot. So, yeah, let's have a few scrubs so they get some experience with the Raptors all firing up at 90% and then go for it and have a good chance of getting through to max Q.
And there is a point in here from Musical Wolves alongside a super chat. Thanks very much. If a tile falls during launch, how much damage could it do to the ground? So for context, if you are unaware, each Starbrick tile on Starship is about 30 centimeters, roughly 12 inches across. Now, Alex, we know you were talking earlier about the not Mars and the NOTAMs. I guess, luckily, the majority of this flight is going to be over the ocean, isn't it? In case anything falls off or there's a flight termination system is enabled or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And once the ship is already well close to orbital velocity, the desired trajectory, whatever you want to call it, it's already too fast that if a tile, breaks off or something, it'll break up.
Yeah. And an interesting point here from a space podcast saying, does the flap aero cover affect aerodynamics? Now, Chris, is kind of in the name that these are put in place to help the aerodynamics of the ship.
Yeah, again, there's lots of opinions. I've seen many, many varying opinions on the way they've done this, but I always use the caveat of saying, well, there's people at SpaceX who know what they're doing. And they wouldn't be like, you know what, I was watching this live stream on NSF and you know what we've completely forgotten about? Oh dear. Quick, let's get back to redesign. They know what they're doing. I'll also add another caveat in that the landing technology of this vehicle, if they ever get to the things where they're bringing it back for catches, there's people like Lars Blackmore at SpaceX working now on Starship, and these are the people who made a success of Falcon 9 landings. The Falcon boosters all coming back now, one after the other, with almost routine. I hate saying the word routine when it comes to spaceflight, but that's what it's like. So a lot of the Starship technology is based on the experience base they've got with Falcon 9 and the successes they've had with it. And that's where I get a lot of confidence with things that may not look particularly right to us, but they know what they're doing.
And Xbar has an important question here, Alex, about the ice with the cryogenic fuels inside. Could there be an issue where ice can fall and hit the flaps? Many rockets, as they launch, the ice that forms around the outside does peel off during flight. So, Alex, could that be a potential problem with, I'd say, the ship's aft flaps? Because there isn't really going to be that much ice above the forward flaps on the ship.
Yeah, so it is definitely a possibility that there could be ice hitting the flaps. Now it all comes down to what the speed at that they fall into the flaps, and obviously from where it comes from. I think the top of the aft flaps is somewhere around the middle of the liquid oxygen tank. So you still have the other middle, so basically the other half of the liquid oxygen tank and the whole liquid methane tank, where ice forms and can hit the aft flaps. Now it is also true though that depending on the orientation of the ship as it goes into space, it might not be that bad of a deal, because maybe it falls on the leeward side of the flap. If it falls on the windward side where the tiles are located, we're into a very itchy situation, right? But if it is on the other side where there's no tiles, well, as long as it doesn't really break the flap itself, it should be okay, I think. But I'm no flapologist. I'm not sure, you know. Like I'm not really an expert in flaps.
I can add actually, Ryan, just one little thing about the ice is that was a big thing during the shuttle. If you got your bingo cards ready, there's your shuttle reference. The ice team would go out after the prop load had finished with the external tank and would check the external tank for bubbles of ice, which were on the side of the tank, and they would find the areas that could potentially liberate and hit the space shuttle orbit on the side. It was just a bigger risk, if not more than a risk, compared to the shuttle, the firm liberation that would come off. And we all know what happened there with the problems with firm liberation from the external tank. So they would literally have a team go out with about a couple of hours to go for launch with binoculars, with all the venting going around them, and just checking the actual tank with binoculars for big globbles of ice which would fall off. The good thing with Starship is it's in line. There's nothing on the side for it to really hit. So the question related to the top end is relevant, but I think a fully frosty vehicle and its ice shedding off during liftoff at least doesn't have anything to hit, as far as maybe just the aft part ring, you know, the engine shields, maybe. That's about it, really. But I think it's a lot safer now as an inline vehicle.
Indeed. And there are loads of good questions coming in, so keep them coming at NASASpaceflight in chat. But I'm going to quickly just go through some of the super chats and the like that we've been getting before the stream went live and whilst we have been on air. So firstly, thanks to Callum for becoming a Padrat member, and also to Anand. We will rocket you, gifting 5 Red Team memberships, and Dylan's become a Capcom member. You get access to the Discord, so does Purvis. You get access to the Discord. Thank you to Joel for becoming a Red Team member. $25 from Muddy Creek Critters saying, things are getting exciting. Some funds for the after liftoff obligatory shots. Thanks very much for that. And from Martin saying, any particular reason why they are not attempting a chopstick catch of the booster this time around, when better than on a test flight? Now, Alex, why are they not bringing Super Heavy back and just leaving it in the Gulf of Mexico to spend the rest of its days?
Well, I mean, the answer could be just that they have not the desire to go with that. That they just simply don't care about these early ships and boosters to recover them, because there are plenty more coming down the line, and they are not really gonna risk any of the pad infrastructure to catch a booster for the first time on the first flight, and really the first time they fly the booster at all. So yeah, if you can imagine, they probably are not going to be attempting that until they actually have a lot of data on boosters. And from one of the documents that was released yesterday alongside with the launch license, we know that at least a catch is not expected basically until the 4th flight. Might be later though. It's like a no earlier than kind of planning there, because first, second, and third flights are not going to catch the booster. Same for the ships. They're not going to be recovering the ships as well.
Thank you to Tracy for the 5 Red Team memberships being gifted there, and Moddy Space Industries for gifting a membership. We also have Dennis with a store message. Super hyped for the OFT. Thanks for your amazing coverage. You're very welcome, Dennis. You got a patch. Patches are very popular at the moment, and thanks to Jim for the 10 USD. No message, but thank you anyways. And CM in a minute. Sorry if I got that wrong. I followed the development of the interplanetary transport system since that's what Starship was called back in 2016. Absolutely ecstatic for Monday. Thank you all at NSF. We're very excited as well. Thanks to Carolyn for becoming a new member. Also the super chat from Bash, sorry if I got that wrong, and also from Marek. And we also have a few new members here. We have Owen becoming a PadRep member, Florida Space Nerd gifting 1 red team, Anthony gifting 5 red teams, and Justin Mooney upgrading to Capcom. Justin, that means you can now join the Discord server. Yeah. Getting into some more questions here. Tag us at NASASpaceflight. We'll do our best to answer them. Friendly Mushroom here has a very good point. Chris, I want your opinion on this. Do you think they will scrub the launch? They won't launch if they see tiles falling off during engine ignition on the pad?
Oh, that's a great question. You know what? I think they'll still go for it. I'm just thinking because, again, I'm going back to my personal parameters that maybe SpaceX might be thinking as well, that anything's a bonus. They may get some great... Remember, if they launch and some tiles are falling off, they know they've got a problem during re-entry, but they'll probably know that, and they'll go, okay, well, maybe we'll get some good data on what the ship re-enters like with some TPS liberations already known to us. So, it's a brilliant question. Personally, I would still launch. I think for me, the only parameters really they'll be concerned about is the tank pressures and the engines when they light up for that 6 seconds in the countdown, where they get 6 seconds at 90% and all engines are still happy, they will launch it because that's launch commit. If they've lost some tiles during that 6 seconds, I mean, providing it doesn't shed the whole thing doesn't fall to bits as a shedding event, then I'll think they'll still go for it, and they'll go, right, okay, at launch we lost X amount of tiles. Let's see how the vehicle does on re-entry now with those tiles lost. Because remember, the space shuttle could lose tiles and it could re-enter without a problem. It's where you lose the tiles that's important. So that's another parameter as well, where they lose the tiles. In the high heat areas, it depends. Great question though. That's got me thinking as I was talking.
Yeah. And Jara with $25, thanks very much for that, saying, from my grandson Liam, he would like to know what's the estimated top speed that Starship is going to reach on the orbital test flight. Now, Alex, I'll hand the physics question over to you, but first, it's not exactly an orbital flight, so it will be under orbital velocity, and the trajectory isn't really known yet. So do we have any idea on velocities just yet?
I will guess it's just going to be short of orbit, so it's probably going to be very, very close to the sort of 28,000 kilometers per hour speed that you get for orbital velocity. In more normal terms, that is about 7.8 kilometers per second. I think that number is probably easier to imagine, at least for me, because I can imagine going 7.5 or 7.8 kilometers per second being hopping up to the town nearby or something like that in just 1 second or 2. So that is like a tremendous amount of speed that this thing is going to be going.
And I'm going to bring in this question quickly from Gary, but many people in the chat have been asking the same question. Any discussion of the elevator shaft incident last night? Now, Chris, do we have any information about that?
Oh, yeah. Again, we see these things all the time. I think there's so much focus on this pre-launch flow that anything's going to be noticed more under a microscope. All I would say is, again, I don't think there's any big problem. We've seen the workers continue their work. Again, this is all a launch site for a test program. You're going to see things like this, but I think the key thing for everybody was there was no ambulances afterwards or anything like that, and they carried on with their work. So I wouldn't really be too concerned about that at all, personally.
Sounds good. Chungo's asking, would they use Starbase, talking back earlier to the different launch sites, would they use it as a tanker depot, or would they build one somewhere else? They seem to need tankers for future missions. That's kind of a key component of the Starship system, being able to orbit, refuel in orbit. So, Alex, do you think once the kind of test development for the Starship program is done, could Starbase be converted into just a purely tanker facility?
That is a great question. I think there's a possibility that this place ends up being just for launching tankers nonstop, while from the KC they launch payloads and things like that. Because there's definitely that possibility that they dedicate each location to one type of launch, because that actually probably even optimizes the launch flow and the launch cadence, because then you have each side optimized precisely for the kind of mission that you want. For a mission with payloads or crew, you need all sorts of specialized infrastructure, and for tankers you just need to fuel the rocket, and that's pretty much it. So maybe not fully sure, but it's a great idea.
Just bringing our attention to what we're seeing on screen at the moment. The ship is approaching the top of the booster now. It's been lifting for about 10-15 minutes, going up the side of the launch tower. You can see there the ship being lifted above the absolutely enormous Stage 0 facility at the launch site. And that ship will soon be getting rotated over to the booster. Now, a question here from Jade Y asking, do I get to keep Starship if it lands in my backyard? What should I do with it? Now, Chris, I'm just going to say, for the orbital test flight at least, if the Starship ends up in someone's backyard, something's gone very wrong. But generally more seriously, I guess we've also seen incidents with like space debris re-entering and stuff. What if a bit of space debris lands in your garden? Are you the owner of that now, or do you have to, or there is like a note that says like return to SpaceX?
Yeah, you've got to send it back to SpaceX. There's been examples where people have tweeted, look at this thing I found off a Dragon or whatever. That SpaceX will tend to go calling for it because they do own it. It's their property. And it's a good thing to send it back. I mean, a lot of times you send these things back, you're helping the program overall because they want to see the thing and they want to get data from it and they want to understand it better. So rather than put it on eBay, I think that would be not a very good move. It is SpaceX property. Seriously though, yeah, the rules are it's still SpaceX property.
I still get them to pay for the shipping though.
In terms of legality, even SpaceX is sort of liable for all the debris reaching places and things like that. So even when they fall in the ocean, they have to sort of go out there and either sink the debris or retrieve them if they can. So there's no debris out there or anything like that that can cause any harm. So yeah, it's not just that it's their property; it's also that they are liable for that. So in terms of legality stuff, they might actually be like, "Hey, give it to us because that's our responsibility."
Yeah, and we just saw there a wonderful picture of the 6 Raptors underneath Ship 24. It's now just approaching the top of Booster 7, so we should expect that to be getting rotated across in the next few minutes here. Geo with a question here about Starbase towers yet again. Do we think a second tower, Orbital Launch Pad B, will be built at Starbase? Because in the animation that was just published by SpaceX, which was really just an updated version of the animation from last year, there was a second tower here. So, Chris, do you think that a second pad is in the plans for Starbase?
I'd like to see it, and I know there is definitely plans for it. We've seen not just in the renders that SpaceX put out, but also in like planning documentation. The status was that they have to apply to the Army Corps engineers, I believe it is called, to go for it again, because I think with ever-changing design of the Starbase launch site, they need to then sort of resubmit, and that's where they stand with this. So if they do want a second tower, the possibility is there, just apply for it again, and it won't take them that long. I say that won't take them that long. As far as building a massive tower goes, it won't take them that long to build it there. The question is when they need it. First of all, I think they want to get these test flights out of the way. They don't want to destroy anything in the meantime. And then once they've got some confidence and they need the flight rate of the second tower, then they'll probably apply for it and build it pretty fast.
Getting a very loud interruption here from event. But as we can see, S24 has stopped its climb up the tower. This is the highest it will be before launch. Fingers crossed on Monday. Alex, have we seen any developments with the launch license since yesterday, or is that pretty much set in stone now?
Looks like the QD arm is moving into place. Yeah, it's moving.
Also, I've tweeted out a rather inventive line, like a big silver baby in the arms of a huge mechanical guardian. Quite proud of that. I'm quite proud of that, even if I say so myself.
I'm sorry, Ryan. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so the launch license was published yesterday. Has there been any updates on that, or is that pretty much set in stone now?
Well, it is never set in stone because these licenses can actually be modified, and one of the terms is actually saying that, hey, for now, the launch license only applies for the first launch. But it also states that they can modify it, and launch licenses are modified all the time. If you go to, the Falcon 9's licenses and things like that, they have a ton of modifications from years and years of flying. So, yeah, it's no big deal. They can modify that, and so yeah, I think we touched almost on everything yesterday. They uploaded a new version of the launch license. It's the same. They just forgot to add one page, which was the financial responsibilities. Things like what happens if a piece of debris falls into a person or something like that, or damages launchpad, or damages whatever kind of property. Those things were added. I think we're already out of the live stream by then, so we didn't cover that. But it's not a huge deal, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Getting interrupted by the police sirens here. And the police megaphone. The heat shield tile space podcasts, they look light on top because that's just the sunlight reflecting. The heat shield tiles are not actually a different color because of the it's just the sunlight.
No, but there's actually a reason why they're different. So most of the tiles on the ship are installed on the ship via 3 pins that they are basically pressed on and clipped into the vehicle, but the ones right at the top of the nose cone, those are glued on, and so you see that lighter color on top. That is usually because of the residue of, I believe, the sort of the filling that is used in between the tiles. It's called the RTV. It's some sort of RTV material. RTV stands for room temperature vulcanized material. So that is sort of what you see there. That is a little bit more white, because it has that residue on top.
And talking about white hardware, the RVAC nozzles are still pretty white on the inside, says Alec Reeves. Do they get test fired with smaller nozzles or a short duration, Alex?
They are test fired just like they are, because the nozzles, when you see the Raptor vacuum, it's not like Merlin, where the nozzle extension, as we've seen today on Transporter 7, you can basically cut it off and it's just basically a thin layer of niobium. In this case, it is an actual, like an extension of the nozzle proper, because it has all of its cooling channels, it's made of the same material. So you could make it shorter, but you will actually have to manufacture it shorter. You wouldn't be able to just basically slap it on and things like that. It's not that easy. The way that they test it on the ground, though, if you watch our McGregor live streams and our videos explaining that as well, you can see that they put some kind of ring that holds in place the nozzle, so that when they fire it, because it's optimized for a vacuum, when they fire at sea level, it shakes off that big nozzle. So in order to not shake off and break off the nozzle, they put a ring around it so that it stays in place and maintains the structural rigidity. They also do that for ship testing while on the ground, and then they remove that while it is for flight. So we can see there that there's nothing around the engines themselves holding them together for structural reasons. If you saw another ship at another later time, for testing, for example, then you will see that. Now that I'm talking about the engines, though, one thought is coming to my mind that this is the last time these engines are gonna be out in the open until it's time for stage separation, which is, oh my god, it's a thought that I never thought could cross my mind, but yeah, it's real. It's getting real.
What a scene we're looking at right now, though. I was just tweeting that at that second. I hopefully see this. We won't see from this angle, obviously, but hopefully we see this scene on Monday if they launch, because that will be staging. And then the next key thing will be if the Raptor vacs fire up and the 3 sea level engines fire up, because all 6 engines will be firing up at for second stage. They'll fire up for how long is it for, Alex? How long is the firing of the second stage?
It is 6 minutes and 23 seconds. Ask
There
me
we
how
go.
I know.
How do you know that, Alex?
Because we did a video about this, and I actually wrote the script. Ryan hosted the video as well, so I remember all the times of the top
There we
of my
go
head.
then. But yeah, it's an incredible thing. If we're talking about covering this launch and we're in space and it's firing, the ship's firing its Raptors, and we're like, okay, we're timing down till shutdown, and then they go into the coast phase, and then they go for re-entry. I'm like, I seriously don't expect it, so that'll be even more intense. I think launch day itself is going to be intense in its own right, just in the countdown. But getting to the point where they launch and then we're going through the milestones, it might be like Falcon Heavy. I remember that. I still go back to the live stream of Falcon Heavy's maiden flight because it's just incredible the way it's all put together and the way the events all seem to work. The staging, getting through Max Q, the staging, the boosters coming back and landing together, and just the only thing they lost was the center core, and that was no big deal. Let's face it, they've not landed one since on the Falcon Heavy center cores. So it's just an incredible, incredible thing, and this is a multitude of extra rocket we're looking at right now, if I can put it that way. This is a super heavy, multi-planetary capable vehicle that's also fully reusable and rapidly reusable. It's an incredible time if this works out.
It is going to be a very exciting time indeed. Question here alongside $10. Perhaps the booster will not be recovered so it can start as an artificial reef. Alex, I was actually thinking about this last night. What are they doing with the booster?
Oh boy. Well, first of all, they are landing it on the ocean, as we've mentioned in previous times, but we also got a little bit more details into what it's going to happen after it touches down on the ocean. It appears that they're going to be landing it right at the surface of the ocean. It's not going to be apparently just basically interpreting the words on the document. It kind of seems like they're not going to be doing some kind of hover and testing the chopsticks or whatever as it comes down for the landing. So it's going to be at sea level. It's going to drop, and they expect they expect it to probably survive. But what's going to happen is water is just going to rush into the vehicle as it comes through the fill and drain ports on the booster. Another option, though, if it doesn't sink, because that doesn't happen, if it doesn't sink, then they're going to open the valves on the tanks and just let the water rush in. And if that doesn't work either, they're going to tow the booster in such a way that it's going to be flipped and made sink. And if it doesn't work this way as well, they have like the last resort, which is basically shooting at it, making a hole in its hull, because that's the only other way that they could remotely sink it.
We've had a few more different contributions coming in over the last few minutes. I'm just going to run through them real quickly. Thank you for everyone who's becoming a member. Eastwood, Nick Flat becoming Capcom. You get access to the Discord server. Rasmus says, massive thanks for the amazing coverage you have all been providing. You're very welcome. We also have 5 Red Team memberships being gifted by Joa. Thanks for the $20 from Brittany. We also have Bitty becoming a Red Team member, Josh gifting 10 Red Team memberships, and Lee with a store message. I assume you probably bought something to do with the patch. Thank you very much for that. Oh, it is a patch. I got it right yet again. We have Bright. Am I getting that right? Sorry if I'm not, with the 5 gifted Red Team memberships. Thanks very much for that. And Philip is asking, what time in the window do you expect them to launch? Now, Chris, the window opens quite early on Monday morning. What time do you think that the ship and booster will actually be ready to go in that window?
Yeah, it depends on when the tank farm starts spooling up and we start seeing the vehicle getting frosty. I think they might. I mean, the window isn't that long compared to some of the tests they've done recently. So it's really kind of like, I think personally, when we get a fully frosty vehicle, we can start really thinking about it, because I wouldn't want to give a T0 time. I wouldn't dare, because if someone sets their alarm going, okay, I'm going to set my alarm 1 hour into the window, it might have launched by then for all we know. It's really a case of, I would recommend you get in early onto our live stream, which will start very early, by the way, and we'll be tweeting out the milestones such as prop loading. And once we start prop loading, we'll get an idea. There'll be some built-in holds as well. That's why I don't want to give a T0 out. But there'll be some built-in holds as well, which we've seen with previous tests. And then, you know, again, I still don't think it'll launch first time, Ryan. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I know it'll launch first time now. I keep saying this, but I just don't think it will launch first time. But that'll be good as well, because we'll get some ideas from what they do with the first attempt on their timelines. So it'd be a case of, we'll get some experience based from the first attempt if they don't launch first time.
And
go
on, Alex.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that they probably, because they have 2.5 hours of a window, they probably are going to go through fueling only when they are actually ready. So while they were probably targeting the opening of the window at first, do not be surprised if they slip that to the right into the window as they try to get, you know, more and more confidence that when they actually go into fueling, they're going to go for launch. Because that's also something that they do for Falcon 9 as well, and they probably want, because they don't have a recycle capability within the same window. It takes 1 hour and 39 minutes to recycle, to just basically fuel up the rocket. It will take the whole window to be able to recycle, even if they targeted the opening of the window. So it's very likely that they're gonna go only when they are ready. So it could be that we go into launch day, things are not ready, and they just even scrub before our fueling. So do not be surprised about that. Set your expectations, as Crispy was saying, because scrubs can even happen even before the engines light up or the rocket is being fueled. So there you go. That's your notice.
And you can see here, Ship 24 is now approaching the top of Booster 7. Don't go anywhere just yet, because we saw the last time they stacked or tried to stack the ship, where they were adjusting it for a little while. So do not go anywhere. The job is not over yet. And looking at this with his own eyes, out in the field with the team down at Starbase, we have a Jack Bayer.
What's up? How do you hear me?
We hear you well, Jack.
Excellent. Well, looks like Ship 24 is about to be stacked on top of Booster 7, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood. No whammy. For the last time.
It's getting very exciting, and the closer that the ship gets to the booster, personally, it just feels like this is becoming even more and more real. I'm struggling to believe what I'm saying, to be honest, because it's been such a long development program, such a long drought of flights from Starbase of Starship. So fingers crossed that this is still all on track for Monday. I am just going to run through a few big super chats we've gotten here. Firstly, from Russell, $100. Thank you very, very much for that. And thank you very much for that. Asking a question kind of along the lines of roughly how much the Starship development program has cost. Chris, do we have any clue how much the world's most powerful rocket has cost to develop?
No, but I will say that Elon has made a big point about Stage 0 not only being the most complex part of the whole program, can be even more than a rocket, but also as far as the costs go. I mean, let's face it, they've got not just the launch site that they've built, the production site, which they're still even expanding. That's the crazy thing about it. It's a huge area. And if you take into the cost of the workforce as well, I wouldn't want to guess I'm sure somebody out there is giving some estimates out there based on what they think it costs, but we are talking a lot of money. But again, I think it's helped also. The HLS contract win was a big thing for the viability. And also the fact that this vehicle can launch so many Starlinks, which is such a major part of the SpaceX business case now, that I think whatever they spent, they've allocated towards the viability of it. And I just don't want to put a figure on it. Alex, have you got any idea of how many millions and billions it
I'll
cost?
put a
Oh, Jack,
put a
Jack,
figure on
yeah,
it.
sorry. Yeah, put a figure on it, Jack.
somewhere. If I had to guess, I'd say somewhere between 3 and 10 million a day.
Wow.
Oh, million a day. I was thinking you were saying like billion.
Well, if you add it up over the
no,
years, yeah.
Yeah. I would probably say between 5 and 7 billion up until this point, I will guess.
Definitely not
Yep.
something that I could
Mm.
personally afford, but it's all of the revenue being generated by SpaceX, like Chris mentioned, with the government contracts, and then also through their other means of generating money through selling missions on their other vehicles, Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy. It all goes into pretty much the vast majority of it, I'd assume, goes into developing the vehicle and, of course, paying the people who are developing this vehicle. We also had 50 Red Team memberships being gifted by Joa. Thank you very much for that. If you're one of the 50 who receives one of them, make sure to thank Joa in chat for that. We have a question here from Set Apart asking if the 33 Raptors startup, being a bit on the fence about the startup there from the offset there, how wide will the flames be? So kind of what's the radius of the flameage we're gonna see, Chris? Because there's no trench there, is there?
No, there's not, but they are working on. We've seen with pictures from Jack. If you're one of our members, you'll be able to see the pictures. There's flame trench work going on there, flame deflectors. They've got the water deluge system that's going to be added to it as well. So it's something that's going to be developed over time, and that will then play into what they're doing with 39A and maybe LC49 when they build the 2 towers there eventually in the next few years, we see. Again, I like the idea that the fact that they're going for it without that right now, because they'll get so much data, they'll know what they need. I know Elon's mentioned he wants like a water ring around the outside of the orbital launch mount because of the way the engine's like a flamethrower during launch. So there's so much yet to be done. But that's what a test program's about. This is what it is. This is a test flight for a test program, and they'll get so much data from it. So I'm sure they'll get the knowledge, real life knowledge, real flight knowledge from this vehicle that will play into what they need to add to the actual infrastructure of stage 0.
And Alex, the Mars transfer windows, they open up roughly every 18 months. Lucas is asking if SpaceX are ready, what do you think the chances are of a Starship being sent up to Mars during the next Mars transfer window, which is, if you don't know, that's essentially when you can get to Mars using the least amount of propellant.
I think that window is like a year and a half from now, so maybe there are good chances that they do that. I'm not fully sure though if it's gonna be 2024 when they send an uncrewed mission to Mars. It's most likely, to me at least, that they do that in 2026 at the earliest, because 2024 sounds very, very early, because the ship has to survive all the way out to Mars. And while it might be good for maybe a loop around the moon or something like that, that is maybe a week or so of a trip time from the moon and back, but to Mars, it needs to survive for way longer. So all the electronics, all the components, the way that they're gonna be even providing power to the vehicle systems, like we haven't seen anything about any solar panels or whatnot. So that's something that they will have to develop eventually.
We've had a few more contributions. I say a few more, that's a big understatement. We've had a lot of contributions coming in, so I'm going to try and get through this as much as quickly as possible. Thank you for becoming a member, Matt. We also have I believe that's South African contribution there from LMC, $20 from Brittany. Thank you very much for that. We also have a store message in from Stuart. Thanks very much for purchasing off the store. Same as Dennis, got a couple items off of the shop there as well. And Sneezy Ferret here. I'm gonna ask Alex about this. How exactly is the ship attached to the top of the booster?
Oh, yeah. So we actually explained this on the latest Starbase update, so you can watch it on detail there. But it basically three pins on the top of the booster, and in the middle of the pin, there's a hook, and the pin basically serves for the ship to be able to be aligned properly as it is settled onto the booster, and then the hook just hooks to the ship and holds it together.
And I was speaking of store messages earlier. If you yourself would like to get an item off of the shop, make sure to head on over to shop.nasaspaceflight.com. The new patch which you just saw came back into stock rather a couple of days ago. So if you want to get your hands on one of them to, I don't know, put it on your jacket, velcro it onto your bag, something like that, make sure to pick one of them up over at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. It's not only a patch you can also get it in t-shirt form, or you can get it in hoodie form, or if you like, you can get it on a jumper, a mug, or even a banner to pin up on your wall. And it's not just, this is the most relevant design to what we're talking about at the moment, but it's not the only item which we have on the shop. As you can see there, we've got plenty of Starship metal prints. We also have metal prints of various other brands of rocket and from different companies. These images coming in, I believe this one's from Nick with Hoppy in the foreground, some wonderful colours at sunset, I think, trying to do the positioning in my head quickly. Those are very high quality. Chris, I know you love your metal prints that you've got up in your setup at home. So yeah, all of that and more is available at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Getting back to the lift here, it looks, Chris, as if we're nearly there, but the scale of this vehicle is huge, so I'm going to guess that we're probably about 2 feet out, roughly, about a meter and a bit out there.
Yeah, this is where it takes up to 20-30 minutes now from this point, because they need to align it. It takes a long time to align it. Some people in chat probably not used to these matings because they think it's going to be plopped right down on it within a minute or so. It's not. It's going to take a while. They have special instrumentation, and they're remotely controlling it. And we've seen from previous times they'll even bring it back off again and then realign it and put it back on again. So it's still a while away. I think about 20 minutes. Probably expect until we get to a mate.
Yeah. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, we will have to first see that alignment, because obviously right now we're seeing that it's not aligned with the pins. We also have that sort of alignment indicator, which is that pipe running down from the right of the flap on the ship. That should be aligned with a pipe that is also coming from below at the top of the booster. Those two should be mated together. That's the engine chill pipe for the Raptor engines on the ship to be chilled down, and they expel liquid oxygen and things like that out of there. So that needs to go out through those pipes. So that connection needs to be properly sealed, properly connected, and aligned. So once we see those two coming together very clearly, that's probably going to be an indicator that is very well settled. But again, as we mentioned on the previous lift, they need to not only align this side but also the other side, because this is 9 meters diameter. So when you see it aligned here, it might not be aligned on the other side of the vehicle because it's very big. So just keep an eye on it.
A question coming in here from Ray Sanchez asking if they end up lengthening the ship by 10 meters, assuming that the lift points stay in the same place. Does SpaceX have enough room on the the carriage to travel, the Mechazilla carriage to travel? Chris, what do we know about the height of the Mechazilla carriage?
Well, we know that this is preset to what it can do with the vehicle, where it can bring it over on top and bring it back down again. It's literally just a tower length, so it's the same. It's designed for the height of stacking the vehicle. Simple as that.
Alex, have we had any word recently from SpaceX if we're gonna, or Elon for that matter, if we're going to be seeing a lengthened Starship, or is that not really something they're talking publicly about right now?
Well, it appears that maybe 10 meters might be doable for the ship, because you will basically see the same here, but the chopsticks will be a little bit like yeah, just like 10 meters higher than this. It doesn't seem like it is too much. Maybe 20 meters to go until they hit the top. So they probably have a little bit of a leeway there, but even then, they can just basically move the lift points on the ship, have them a little bit lower, so that it's approximately in the same location for the chopsticks point of view. That might be another way to go around that.
And Jaren here has a question alongside a super chat. Is there a public viewing area if I wanted to drive down there? Well, first I'm going to say there isn't really an official SpaceX viewing area. If you try and get along Highway 4 at all on launch day, you're just going to be turned around. So don't even bother. What I think, Jack, you can come in on this one. If you're in a boat, there are going to be designated areas, and if you're in a car, there's Isla Blanca Park, if I got that correct.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jack is available, or Jack?
Jack, are you around? Seems like might not be
Yeah,
around.
we're not getting any comms from Jack at the moment. So Alex, there are the green Mariner areas, and there's also Isla Blanca Park. But there's also a very important condition with getting into the park, which everyone should be aware of.
Yeah, we actually
Can you
talked
hear me
about
now?
this. Oh, there we go.
Yes, we've got you, Jack.
Yep. You guys got it right. Isla Blanca Park is where to watch it from on land, or really anywhere on South Padre Island. Ideally the southern portion of the island, so you're as close as possible. And yes, if you're in a boat, there are, as you can see on the map, designated areas for boaters. I believe you guys were about to mention something about the park being tricky to get into and cash only. Go for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you are driving down to Isla Blanca Park, you cannot pay to get in with your card. So make sure you have, Jack, I believe it's 12 USD cash only. Make sure you have that because you don't want to be the person doing the U-turn of shame.
Yes, that is correct. And also that U-turn of shame holds everyone else up too. Like, you think about it, we're all in this together. We're all on Team Starship trying to watch this thing launch. And so when you pull up to the gate, have your cash out, have it ready. Ideally, have exact change. Because the line is going to be long. It's going to take a long time to navigate it, especially depending on when you arrive at the park. So yeah, you don't want to be the one to hold up the line. Everyone wants to get in, so move as fast as you can. Be ready to go once you get up to the guard gate, or I guess it's not a guard, but the pay gate. And yeah, just make sure you get there early because I don't know what the capacity of the park is. It's very, very large, but at the same time, this is a huge event. So I wouldn't put it past reality to initiate a situation in which the park actually does fill up. So get there early. Be ready to go, have sunscreen, you know the deal. Like, treat it like a day at the beach. Have all the things you need. Have food. Have lots and lots of water. Don't mess around with dehydration. You guys know the drill.
And especially don't panic. Because it's gonna be packed. It's gonna be with a lot of people, but look, just enjoy the moment, right? And be prepared for everything. And to be prepared for everything, we actually have a video for you to be prepared for going to Starbase to watch the launch. So we actually released this video. I think it was two days ago. Time already passes me by. So yeah, you can go that. I think Crispy's linking that in chat. That
Spamming it.
video, yeah, narrated by Mr. Das and Nick, also with a little cameo there, here and there with Adrian as well. So you can definitely check that out if you want to have some advice on how to visit Starbase.
And I'm just going to draw our attention back to the gap between the ship and the booster quickly because it's getting smaller. The ship is approaching the booster. It's probably about one heat shield tile away now, so that's probably about not 1 centimeter. Look at me go, but about 1 foot, about 30 centimeters. So that is the gap at the moment. Chris, how long do we expect the stacking to take from this point?
Yeah, well, it was 20 minutes when I mentioned it 5 minutes ago, so we've got 15 minutes. It looks like it's going quite fast today. Actually, they do look aligned. Again, I think that is a lot to do with it. Again, we've seen previous stackings take quite a long time because they didn't look quite aligned and they had to do some more alignment. But this looks very close now. They look like they've got some procedure down to a T here.
And talking about alignment, we have a question here from Infinite asking, how do they adjust the ship's position and rotation whilst it's being lifted? Alex, how is the ship translated and rotated?
Yeah, so the chopsticks themselves, you can see when you have it like with all the basically on the wide view, you will be able to see like two triangles on each side, on each arm there will be one triangle. And those triangles, they basically have it's sort of stabilizers that go into the ship. There's like little sockets there on sort of the halfway point of the ship, and that adjusts basically can push the ship a little bit left, a little bit right, a little bit to one side, and then forwards and backwards. There's the pins on the chopsticks themselves. So the pins that actually help lift the ship, those can move a little bit. A little bit forwards, a little bit backwards. They can actually twist a little bit the ship. It's not a huge amount of movement though, but you don't need a lot of movement to actually be able to move this thing that big. Because even 1 degree or 2 that you move the ship, because it's so big, it's like 50 meters long and 9 meters diameter, you can already move it a lot just by moving it a few degrees here and there. So you don't need a lot of movement, just that bit back and forth from the pins themselves, and also the stabilizers at the bottom help left and right, and you can have full control of the position of the ship.
Yeah, and we can see those two little notches there below the ship fin, Chris. So you can kind of see them being lined up with the two little bits that are sticking out on top of the booster. So is that how SpaceX is aligning the ship with the booster?
Yeah, it's great because the last time we saw the stack, we had to restack it again. We could see it wasn't properly aligned. It just looked different, especially when they put it actually down onto the booster. It kind of moved the entire stack. So that's where we knew that wasn't very great. And they took the ship back off again and then loaded it again for a restack. So this time looks a lot better. And I wonder if they're just getting the experience base from it now, because it can't be easy. This isn't some like Xbox controller where you just like lining it up. This is a real big task they're doing here right now. But this just looks a lot better. And
Yeah.
I would say they may just be very close to a full stack for launch, an historic milestone in itself.
Yeah, this isn't as simple as one of the well, I say it isn't as simple. They're not simple at all. It's not as simple as one of the hook machines you get at the arcades. The prize here is much heavier and much more expensive than what is available in one of those. So I think on the left side of the picture, anyway, the ship is pretty much touching the booster now, which is very exciting indeed. Sodal is asking, well, we said in the trajectory video that we no, not the trajectory video, the timeline video we published the other day, that the ship is going to impact the Pacific Ocean at terminal velocity. Now, Alex, do we know exactly how quick terminal velocity is for Starship?
Well, it depends on the position of the flaps, but it might be between 80 to 100 meters per second. Off the top of my head, I don't remember that for miles. I think 100 meters per second is 360 kilometers per hour. So yeah, they're basically around that speed,
Yeah.
a little bit less depending on the position of the flaps. Because if they are extended, they are at max drag, so you are having the lowest velocity. But if they are more, tucked in, then it's gonna be a faster terminal speed.
Yeah, you're absolutely bang on there. So 100 meters per second, 360 kilometers per hour, 220 miles per hour, just for a bit of context there to what you'd see on the side of the motorway. This is much faster, and I certainly would not want to be impacting the Pacific Ocean at that speed. Sword, sorry if I'm getting that wrong, is asking, when do you think the first orbital Starship fuel transfer could happen? Chris, do we have any timeline on, I guess Elon's calling it refilling, because most of Starship is liquid oxygen?
Yeah, it's refilling, and it's something we've seen in videos, which looks amazing. These two vehicles dancing on orbit. It's going to be a wonderful thing to watch. When it happens, I don't know. We have got to test technology and get it ready ahead of HLS, because that's several tankers refilling the ship for HLS. It needs to be in the short term, but I think for the immediate term, I think we'll just see them trying to get to operational via their Starlink launches. That's something they can put in. It's their own payloads. If they lose a vehicle, not great, but at least it's their payloads. You know what? I wouldn't. What's wrong, Alex?
No, one thing that we actually got to know yesterday via this document, like this
very
long
good. Yes.
was that the first 3 flights are going to be expanded. So it seems like, so this one, it's going to be attempting a re-entry, a controlled re-entry, but the next 2 are going to be with vehicles that are not configured for re-entry, aka these are probably going to be Ship 26 and Ship 27. So Ship 25, it seems like it's not going to be launching, sadly. But yeah, Ship 26 doesn't have a payload bay, for example, and Ship 27 does have a payload bay. But judging the wording of the document, it seems like it's just going to be the same profile as this flight. So it's not going to even go into orbit on the three first flights. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that none of these 3 first flights, even if they have a payload bay, functional or not, or with payload bay door or not, probably will not carry any Starlinks. So maybe on the 4th launch with hopefully Ship 28 might be the moment we see a Starlink launch. We'll see though.
And Jack, go on, Chris.
No, I was going to say thanks, Alex, because that's something that we're learning all the time. So thanks for your eagle eyes of the documentation. We're getting a better idea of where we're going with this plan. So thanks for that.
Jack, I'm going to bring this one to you since you were out there yesterday watching this happen, essentially. The flight termination system, Julian is asking, alongside with some other stuff, which we'll get onto in a minute, is the flight termination system just the boxes that we saw the cherry pickers up at yesterday on the ship and the booster?
Yeah, so it is very pretty much that location. The question asks if that small volume of explosive can really self-destruct, and yes. So what you see when you see that box, the place that it is located in, it is located right at the interface between the liquid oxygen tank and the liquid methane tank. This is called the common bulkhead. And if you break that common bulkhead at this point, even just a little bit, you're going to mix that liquid methane and liquid oxygen together, and it's going to blow up the whole vehicle. So that's the way it works. You just basically puncture the tanks in such a way that both methane and oxygen will mix and produce a deflagration, an explosion mid-air, and basically destroy the rocket so that it doesn't go into undesired locations.
I'm going to talk about point to point quickly. Chris, you've been a big advocate for this. David asking, what are the odds that SpaceX could fly in boosters and starships from Starbase to the Cape, potentially for, like, I don't know, fleet repositioning, or I don't know, even point to point tests? Chris, what do you think about that?
I love point to point so much. Honestly, I'm a massive fan of it. And people on Twitter, and I'm sure people on chat will go, oh, it's not going to really work. It's not a great idea. It's blah, 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 blah. I don't think they'll be looking to use it for repositioning of their fleet. I think we will still be talking about barges, but I really do hope this program works to the point that they get the confidence and they have like a test route like Concorde was, London to New York, where they get permissions from the local authorities to try this out. Again, it won't be for any time in the near future, but just imagine anywhere in the world under 60 minutes. It would completely change the way humans transport around the Earth. And I think that also plays into the question of why rockets? Why do we have rockets? What's the point? It's about benefiting humanity most of the time. And that would be just a great application of a technology where you could, again, the economy of scale will have to bring it down over time because it'd be very expensive to start with. But just the ability to not be restricted as we are right now, that if you wanted to fly to Australia, it's going to take hours and hours and hours and hours. If you can use a rocket, you go into space as well. Think of the bonus of that. You're not only flying to another country, you go into space for the bonus.
Think of the advertisements.
Exactly, yeah. It's just I love the idea of it. Again, I think cart before the horse thing. It's something where they need to bore out the technology, because if you start bringing back boosters over near cities, probably off the coast, but near cities, you're going to have a reliable system. So it's in the future. The answer to the question is I don't think they'll utilize it for their own needs, such as bringing vehicles from Starbase to the Cape, but I do think it's a technology that could work in the future for human transportation.
Hey, can you hear me?
We've got you now, Jack.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Chris is saying. It doesn't, as cool as it would be, it doesn't really make sense to transport boosters and ships to the Cape that way. I mean, that's why we see everything they're doing at Roberts Road to build out a separate entire production facility there for ships and boosters at the Cape. They're just going to build them there. At the same time, though, Chris, I am also a huge fan of point-to-point. And anytime I think about it, I immediately start thinking, like, would SpaceX ever sell a Starship to an operator in the same way that Boeing sells aircrafts to operators? Like, could you imagine, like, an American Airlines Starship with American Airlines livery, or
It'd be American
British
Space Lines
Airways?
for starters.
There we go. Yeah, good call. Good
I
shout.
love that. Yeah, I love that, Jack, because that would be amazing, and also a business case. So that'll make sense to me as well. And also, I'll bring up the point that there's a U.S. Air Force, or is it Army wing on Twitter, that loves using a render of what looks like a Starship as their humanitarian transportation to anywhere in the world. Big, massive humanitarian trucks and supplies being taken around the world at a short notice within minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. And it does show a Starship, and they're just lowering it from a canopy from Starship to a remote area of the world. And there's applications there. It's just the ability to get something somewhere fast anywhere in the world. That's what point-to-point is. I think there's so many applications that could work, again, once they've borne out the technology and it's reliable.
I'm suddenly wondering how big an Abrams tank is, how much it weighs, if it fits in 9-meter diameters, and we'll just leave that there. We'll leave that on the table.
There's a recent report by Eric Berger as well saying that they might have leased High Bay 1 from NASA at the VAB. And what he's saying is that place is going to be used mostly for storage of boosters and ships, not for stacking. So it seems like that's where ships and boosters are going to be. Yeah, that appears to be the place that these first ships and boosters might be going to once they ship out there. But they're probably most likely, definitely, I would say, not gonna fly them out there. They're gonna be shipped to the Cape.
Probably, most likely, definitely. Got it.
Exactly.
Personally,
You probably got the reference.
Personally, I'm just hoping that Norwich Spaceport is a lot more active than Norwich Airport is, and we get some direct flights to the Cape. That'll be very useful for my purposes. Quickly, we've been getting loads of contributions over the last hour or so. Thank you so much to everybody who has been contributing, such as Brittany again. We also have Marek. We don't have time to read all of them out, I'm afraid, but I will just be running through everyone who's becoming members and all of the stuff, like Zip, who's just become a launch director member. Thanks very much for that. We've had a few contributions through here as well. Thank you to Musical Wolves, a common name in chat as always, and many different people have been purchasing off the store ever since that we pointed you all over to shop.nasaspaceflight.com, since we have the patches back in stock. So thank you everybody who has been purchasing items over there. And this is a funny store message here saying it's always when hop and never how hop. And there was a question here from Doug about the sparks earlier this morning, which we did cover earlier. But Chris, do you want to just note on the sparks we saw this morning again?
Yeah, again, it is something we saw come down a tower. We don't know what it was, could be the elevator, but we just know that they've continued working. There was no ambulances. There's nothing, no signs of something major happening or a major incident happening. And it's, again, people who follow these things 24/7, as we've been doing for the past few years, these things happen quite a lot. It's a test site and it's workers and there's everything going on around there. So it's something where the indications of you don't get told. There's no press releases which come out and say this happened today, but you just follow what happens afterwards. And what happened afterwards was workers continued and they've gone on with the full stack. So that's good.
Yeah. And I'm just going to keep hitting some of these contributions and super chats and the like. So thank you everybody who has been adding into the QS bit. It's greatly appreciated, all of the contributions, and hopefully all of you who have been getting gifted memberships, you'll be very happy with your access to the NSF membership program. Now, I'm going to get into a very cool question here. Now we have a cool view of the grid fins. Alex, why is the bottom of the grid fins pointed?
Oh, that is actually sort of to catch the air as it rushes in from below. So we get questions of how are the grid fins going to be even at basically affecting the flight of the vehicle as they go up? And the answer is that the way that the aerodynamics works with these grid fins is different when the air is coming from below than when it is coming from above. So when you see that top is flat, that means it's probably not going to create a lot of drag. It's not going to be as draggy or as aerodynamic controlling. I don't know what to say there, but basically it's not going to be affecting the airflow that much from that side. Now, when it comes back down, the right side that the booster should be using the grid fins, which is when it's coming back down, there it has those indents, those triangle thingies. Those are to be able to catch more air and be able to have more authority as it goes down through the atmosphere.
And Chris, going back to point quickly, whilst it looks as if the ship is now getting quite settled on the booster there, but once again, don't go anywhere. This does take a little bit of time for Starship to get properly settled on top of the booster. How would ITAR work with point to point, Chris?
Oh yeah, it's basically a point-to-point lands in some foreign country where they start dissecting it and looking at their engines.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll have some rules. I'd go back to the people were mentioning about ITS and BFR and the old names of Starship. The first video we saw with point-to-point was incredible. That's why I became a big fan of it, because it was just people going out on a yacht, probably a special SpaceX yacht, out to an ocean platform to board a Starship. It was obviously way changed since, and then flew to their destination. It landed on the barge at its destination, so I'm sure there'd be some kind of rules where the barge would be operated by either SpaceX or their contractor, and they'd have some very strict rules about foreign governments then sailing out in their little dinghies and taking some close-up photographs of ITAR information from their engines or whatever. So I'm sure there'd be a way of doing it. I'm sure there'd be a way around it. So I wouldn't be too concerned about anything unless they start setting up routes to countries which are not very American friendly, shall we say.
Yeah. We've had a few more store messages coming in. Many of them anonymous, but thank you to everybody who has been contributing through the various different methods. One way, if you are interested, is by going to tips.nasaspaceflight.com. That's a bit more of a direct way to support the channel, and it's a good way just to get some of the if you how do I word this? I'm stalling a bit. But yeah, if you want a more direct way of supporting us, tips.nasaspaceflight.com. That's where you can do that. You can put in as much as you want. There's some predefined amounts as well. And apparently Kevin operating the stream is my biggest fan, so thanks for that. So yeah, tips.nasaspaceflight.com if that's something which you are interested in. We're going to get into some more of the questions coming in now. And John is answering Jack's question from earlier, saying that for the record, an M1 Abrams is 55 tons, well under the weight limit for Starship. Size-wise, not so sure, depends on the cargo door. And speaking of cargo doors, Alex, there's the Pez dispenser, which has actually been sealed up on Ship 24. But do we have any news on what's happening with the clamshell kind of design?
I don't think we have seen any sort of design like that coming back yet. Now we'll have to keep our eyes though on that, and surely you will be able to see any of that if it develops at one point if you watch our Starbase updates, which are going sort of weekly, more or less, sort of every Monday. But we'll see.
And I'm just looking through here for a few more questions. Chris, what's the status looking like on the ship? Is it fully stacked, or are we still waiting for some final adjustments?
I'm hoping it is, because I've just tweeted it is. Yeah, I'm calling it. I don't care. I am calling it as stacked. I'm sure there'll probably be a little bit more weight on to go, and providing they don't lift it back off again, I think we can call that stacked. But it looks pretty much, from our experience, this looks stacked. The next key thing will be the release of the sticks. That's something where you know for sure it's done, but that takes a while until it happens.
I will say it's not a stack though. It's,
Oh,
to
well,
my eyes,
it's-
it's not aligned. Yeah, there's a little bit of gap there, and the pipe that I talked about earlier is not aligned as well. So might be a little bit of an adjustment left there.
Also, I will mention, I know our patch is extremely popular. It's probably, for some reason, it's saying it's sold out again. So I don't know if it's that popular because we've got pre-sales going on, but we're checking that. People asking in chat about it. We are checking that right now.
Question here from, or not a question, more a correction from RJDKHS96 saying the Abrams TAC is 66.8 metric tons, nearly 8 meters long, 4 meters wide, and 2.5 meters tall. So yeah, you could certainly fit a few of them within Starship. There's no doubt about that. And David bringing up a good point. FedEx, when it positively, absolutely has to be there in 90 minutes or less anywhere in the world. I was going to say maybe Amazon Prime, but Jeff Bezos has his own rockets to play with. I'm not sure that Amazon would be leasing space on Starship. And Steve actually has a very important question here about point-to-point, Chris, your favourite Starship program. If I can just say that.
It is. You're right.
Best guess for the first non-US country to get a Starship point-to-point spaceport.
Oh, well, I've got my money on the Yorkshire space point-to-point spaceport out of Scarborough. Out of Scarborough.
There we go.
Go get some nice fish and chips before you fly into space. That's what I'd say. You know what? Probably Canada. That would make sense, wouldn't it?
It's the closest country.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, technically speaking, Mexico's the closest country to Starbase. It's literally just like a couple miles away. But
yeah,
you can. Mexico is not a sufficient distance for point to point. Canada is more of a sufficient distance, maybe to Alaska, although that is the US. Maybe up that part of Canada, perhaps.
I think the idea of maybe just a coast to coast kind of like test flight area, a little test path where they could utilize it, maybe from the east coast of Canada to the east coast of the States. Something that makes me think that could be the first route. The first big commercial route would obviously be London to New York. Now, would they launch it from the Thames? No, no chance. But, you know, there's a route they could probably use for UK to the UK West Coast to the
It'll probably
US
be like
East Coast.
London Cornwall Spaceport or something like that. The ridiculous distance names.
Hey, okay, so the two Brits here. I don't want to brag, but Spain is closer.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Well, wouldn't Portugal be closer, Alex?
Oh boy. Well, the Canary Islands. The Canary Islands. They're closer.
Isn't Madeira more west than the Canary Islands?
Oh boy. Yeah. Okay.
I just double geographied you. Look at that. Boom.
Hey, hold on. I can go one better. There's only about 30 people live there, but the Ascension Islands is UK. And that's in the middle of the ocean, so they could do that. And let's be nice and safe.
Well done, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, there's a programming note for the patch. It is now back to pre-order. Thank you for pointing out, chat. It's a very popular item, and that's why the store went, I can't deal with all this. I can't deal with it. I'm going to go sold out. It's now back to pre-order, so you can get back into the patch. Thank you very much.
Speaking of the store, I'm just going to get through a few of these different store messages that have been coming through. Again, it's been very busy on the store. Everybody loving the patch. We can't read all of these out, but a big thank you to everybody who has been buying off of the store, gifting memberships such as Jim, gifting 1 Red Team membership. Helen is waiting for their merch, and thank you to everybody who is helping to basically fund the channel here through your very, very, very kind contributions. They make a big difference in what kind of content we're able to push out, such as being able to do these daily live stream updates with these live views of Starbase with me, Ryan, alongside me for the last hour or so. We've had Alex, we've had Chris, and we've also had Jack, who's had to head off a little bit ago, and in the background we also have Kevin and Patrick. Now, looking at the ship, it looks kind of sealed. Alex, are you satisfied yet with the seal of Starship?
I'm not fully yet.
Still a little bit too much of a gap for you?
Yeah, it's also that like that pipe on the ship, it's a little bit to the left of the one on the booster that needs to be right up top and actually inserted into the pipe on the booster. That's something that we shall see there very, very clearly. Once it is aligned, you will see that there's no gap, that that pipe, it even seems as if it is basically just an extension, as if it's not on the booster itself.
And a question here from Cooper, Alex. We saw just under a year ago, I think it was, Ship 20 and Booster 4 were substituted for Ship 24 and Booster 7 for the OFT. What are the main kind of design differences between Ship 24 and its older sibling, Ship 20?
Well, this kind of feels like a throwback, because we actually did a whole video about this, explaining all the details. But I'm gonna try off the top of my head. So things like the construction methods, the barrel sections, and things like that. The engines are Raptor 2s and not Raptor 1s, for example. Boy, there's so many differences. I cannot remember all of them off the top of my head, but we did have that video a year ago already, because that was in April of last year. So you can definitely watch that if you go way back in the channel, and we explain all of those details between like the differences between Booster 4 and Booster 7 and Ship 20 and Ship 24, and maybe eventually we'll have to do another one because they keep changing the boosters and ships. So whenever we see more big changes, we probably will have to put another one.
And thanks to our Starbase Live camera ops, we've been able to get a more zoomed in shot here. You can see the pipe that we're talking about, the pipe coming down the ship. It bends just from our perspective, to the left, probably that looks like 15, 20 degrees, and then it goes vertically down again. And that is just slightly to the left of the insert point on the booster. So that is that teeny tiny little pipe. Well, I say teeny tiny little, it's relatively large, but this is Starship we're talking about. In Starship scale, that small pipe, that's what we are waiting for. So don't go anywhere, because, well, I don't want to say it, but if anything goes wrong, they may have to lift it up again. I do hope not. We're nearly there. It's the final, it's the home stretch. Fingers crossed this pipe gets positioned correctly, and then Alex will be happy with the seam that Starship has.
By the way, we've got a programming note. SpaceX news. The CRS-27 Dragon, the cargo Dragon that departed the ISS earlier today, is now on its way back to the water. It's got its 4 main parachutes have deployed according to SpaceX. Just been tweeted to be landing in the next few minutes.
Yeah, unfortunately, because it is just a commercial resupply cargo, we don't get a live stream of that, but SpaceX are updating us live through Twitter. Leslie has a question here, Chris. We were talking about this earlier in the stream, but I appreciate many more people have joined us since then. Will there one day be a crew corridor built on the tower here at Starbase?
Right, yeah, that's the question we answered earlier, where it was related to what Starbase is. And Elon, unless plans change, which they can do, especially with the second tower, currently the plan is Starbase is going to be used as a development centre and for test rockets and for learning new upgrades they do to the system and testing them out. Whereas Florida 39A, and I would assume LC-49, which the 2 towers are going to build there, hopefully in a not too distant future, they will be more flagship missions. And I assume 39A will be the first to get a crew access arm, which will allow for crew transportation. Let's face it, I will elaborate a little bit more on the answer I gave earlier. The crewed version of Starship is a while away. It really is. Elon has said he wants to launch, I think he may have exaggerated, but he said thousands of Starships before he puts a crew on. And that's fair enough in the context of he wants to get the experience of Starship to the point where it's as safe as it can possibly be, as far as a rocket goes, and that where he can put crew on it. But we've not seen any designs of the crew vehicle other than renders. There's a lot of work's got to be done for the life support system and things like that. It's a massive undertaking, and it will come several years into the future. I would expect the likes of Tim Dodd on their Dear Moon mission and people like that maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years away before that launches, because there's just a lot of work to do before they get to the confidence level of not just launching official astronauts, but also for the commercial crew, the crewed missions with space. I don't want to call them space tourists, but let's just say non-trained astronauts before they go on to these flights such as Dear Moon and the Dennis Tito mission.
And Chris, I have good news for you because that
Are you happy
alignment
now?
that we were talking about is sort of happening. It's still a little bit high up, but it seems like they're basically like aligning it before they settle on top of the booster. So they're getting it in the right position to then just lower the last few centimeters, and then settle the weight of the ship on top of the booster. This will look gorgeous tomorrow. I think that's probably gonna be when they go into the preparations for that launch, and open the chopsticks and everything in all its glory. That's gonna be awesome.
And we've just had confirmation from SpaceX on splashdown of the Crew Dragon, if anyone was interested in that. We've had a couple of corrections on our geography knowledge, Alex. We have Atlantis Space Shuttle saying, actually, the Grand Turks is closer, UK territory in the Bahamas. And then we have Flawed Perspective saying Saint-Pierre and Michelin, French territory, is closer than anything in Europe. So, Alex, your Spain comment has been, like, triply beat there, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, you see, the mainland UK, it's not the closer. There you go.
We also have Paul Rigg here with a comment about what about Spaceport Cornwall? Now, at the moment, it is essentially just a hangar at Newquay Airport. Virgin Orbit depends how they turn out, if they'll return to there. But Chris, point to point, do you think that as an already kind of space facility, it's already licensed as a spaceport with the Civil Aviation Authority? Do you think that Spaceport Cornwall could become London Spaceport?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the ideal place for it if they're going to have one. And anything like Bristol Channel area, places like that. So it makes more sense being on that southwest corner of the country. If you're going to talk about flights to the States, for example, it's something that would probably make a lot of sense. I just have to go back to the point that it is still a long way away. I was talking about crewed launches being several years away at least, and point to point. So, again, we've got to put things into context. I think point to point will come way after the likes of Dear Moon and things like that if they become a reality. So that gives them a chance to test things out. Again, this is still, the UK space industry is quite burdened. It's still recovering from the days where we couldn't even have UK astronauts via government law. That had to be changed first before we had like Tim Peake could fly.
Yep.
It's an incredible turnaround recently. So it's something that might align with the advancement over the years to come with that area of the country.
And I also think in terms of point-to-point infrastructure, Earth is obviously where humans have been since we became humans. So the infrastructure first, the railways, and then the road network, and then we had ships, of course, and then we had air travel, which is pretty much the dominant way of traveling internationally nowadays. So all of that infrastructure is already in place for that kind of transport. But say moving to Mars in decades time, point to point, I think, could really become a more viable option on a planet such as Mars, because we have the opportunity to develop the infrastructure on Mars to be suitable for point to point, so we won't be disrupting airspace. Like Chris, you were mentioning, like from like the east coast of the US to the east coast of Canada, you've got to try and get the FAA to agree to send Starships over like New York airspace, which is some of the busiest airspace in the world. Yeah. So Mars, definitely, I feel like point to point will become a more viable option in terms of infrastructure. Talking about point to point there. And Raptor Engine is asking, launch in 2 days. How do you feel? I'll go around the room here on this one. Alex, how are you feeling with the OFT scheduled for Monday morning?
Oh boy, speechless is probably the word, because there's so many emotions going through me. That all the preparations, all the tests that we've seen for the past many years already, and even before that, with all the development that we've seen, Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy going to Starhopper, the SN hops, all of that. It's just been an incredible path to this point, and I'm sure launch day that is gonna be all coming together. Because I'm still not even it doesn't. I don't think it has dawned on me that we're this close to seeing this launch, and it's not gonna be the only one. It's gonna be just the first of many to become at the future. So there's gonna be a point where these launches are gonna be even boring at all. It's mind blowing to even think that this is gonna become boring at one point, but maybe that'll be the case in a decade or two.
And Chris, before we get into your thoughts on Monday, I know you're going to say scrub, but the drone has popped up from the left. It looks as if it's like a little DJI Mavic or something like that. Other drone brands are available, of course. So yeah, it seems as if the team in charge of stacking are looking at the seam right now. Alex, is the seam to your satisfaction yet?
Yeah, the alignment looks really good now. I'm probably sure that the drone has gone out there to actually check on that, like some sort of a backup option to check on the alignment.
Chris, what are you thinking for Monday? How are you feeling?
Yeah, not too bad. No, I am beyond excited. This has been a long time coming. I go back again to paraphrase Alex, where we talk about the first things we saw from Starbase. I remember Nomad with his pole cam outside. You can still see where he used to live. In fact, when they take transports to the Starlink garage, that's his house. That was his former house, which is now SpaceX's, on the side of the hill, and that's what the roof was, where Jack and Tim Dodd were when they saw Starhopper do its flight, where water towers can fly. That's where that came from. And that just goes back to where Starlink was, just that Stargate building, which was there before, and some antennas. And now it's this massive facility. We've seen things like Starhopper. We've seen the SM5 and SM6 hops. We've seen many of the vehicles go pop and splosh and fall over and go boom. And now they've got to a position where Starhopper's still there as the original gangster, the OG, sat in the corner of the pad. And we've got this massive, super heavy rocket. And it's about to launch into space. It's an incredible thing. There's so many highlights over the years. We've been covering this. I was still blown away by the first attempt with Ship, where they did the flip and burn and just everything. The way it came back down, stable. It was all working. It was just mind blowing. This is going to be another multitude of interest and also excitement. Whatever happens, I just hope they take their time with it. I don't mind scrubs if it means it can clear the tower and get away from the pad and not cause any major damage, because I think this program is going to be huge for history, for humanity, and for what we can do in deep space, and eventually a city on Mars. That's what it means. That's why it's so important. And I'm nervous and excited.
So the drone has departed the shot. I'm not sure if it's still up there. It's quite hard to see from this perspective. If we see it fly around the other side, of course, then we'll know it's still up there. I'm just going to go through some of these super chats real quick, because many have been coming through over the last few minutes. Juan gifting here with a super chat. Thank you very much for that. Asking, why do you think they are not trying to save the ship? Wouldn't it be helpful to study the heat shield performance? Now, Alex, they are going to be studying the heat shield, correct? They're just not going to be able to recover it.
Yeah, so one important thing that, because this has been asked before, and one of the answers that I usually give is that if the ship goes through re-entry and goes to the point of basically impacting the ocean, I will say that how the heat shield performed is it worked, because that's basically the sort of short answer there, that if it reaches the point of just basically splashing down in the ocean, the heat shield worked, and so you don't really need any sort of a special equipment to see whatever worked or not work, because it worked. Might have been that some tiles have fallen off, but the ship re-entered in one piece and things like that. That's still okay. Like, that's something that still tells SpaceX, hey, it can actually re-enter, right? They will care more about those things later on when they're actually, into operational flights, into an operational cadence where they go, launch, land, repeat, and all of that. So that's going to be something that they're going to care more about in the future. But for now, they're just caring of, it reaches space, it reaches its desired trajectory, and hopefully it makes it through re-entry. But if it doesn't, it's not a big deal.
We also have a question here about the launch time, specifically about what it is in the UK, but I'll just go around and do some rough calculations. So, Alex, what time is the window open for?
So the window lasts 2 hours and a half, and it opens at 7 a.m. Central Time. That will be 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I believe it is 5 a.m. Pacific time, and for the UK people, that should be 1 p.m. UK time, and UTC should be an hour less because I believe the UK is right now in savings times in summertime, which is 1 hour more than UTC. So that should be 1200 UTC.
So
And you
there you
can
go.
probably look it up on Google. What's your
Yeah.
UTC time zone?
Yeah, so get your UTC offset, add it or take it away from 12 o'clock midday UTC. That's when the window opens. We're not necessarily saying that's when Starship is going to launch, but that's the earliest opportunity that SpaceX has to launch Starship 24 and Booster 7 on Monday morning. We have a question here from Kai Lamis. Sorry if I got that wrong. At what elevation will the Starship separate from the booster? Now, Alex, I know that you and I helped make a video about the timings. Do we know any kind of altitudes for these events just yet?
Yeah, it should be similar to Falcon 9, between 70 to 80 kilometers in altitude, more or less. That's sort of the altitude that we're expecting the two vehicles to separate.
And we also have a question here about the deluge system, which we've seen some pipes arriving on a barge, haven't we, Chris? But do we know if there's anything being integrated onto the pad just yet?
That's a very good question. As you said, we've seen the pipes arrive from the Cape all the way to Port Brownsville, and they were quickly moved towards the launch pad. And we thought maybe they're going to try and do it before the launch, but it looked iffy, and now we know for a fact it's not. What we've seen is a lot of preparation down at the ground level for the installation of the water deluge system, but I think it won't be hooked up to the orbital launch mount until Booster 9's flight, with now what we believe is Ship 26. So that's something where I think it's for the next stage. And that's going to be interesting because whatever goes wrong with this Booster 7 and Ship 24 flight, they've got a lot of bonus points with the next one, which is Booster 9's advancements with the modifications such as electric TVC on the Raptor 2s and other things like that. And also the pad infrastructure, if that's got the deluge system installed and maybe some flame diverters, hardware installed by then, it just adds more confidence to the next flight being better than the first. So, yeah, it's something that will be for this flight, but maybe for the next.
Yeah, and I believe we're now getting a live shot of the water tanks, which will be used to power that deluge system right there, roughly in the middle. Those four big, long, white cylindrical tanks. We saw them arriving on a barge. Alex, how long ago was that? I can't remember. It was certainly a few weeks ago now.
I think it was around early February, so it was like, a couple of months ago.
Yeah, it's things are moving so quickly that it's all become a blur with stage 0 there. But yeah, that's the status of the deluge system. Now, Alex, another question for you. Supercat is asking, was there a test for moving the flaps? Now, I know I watched a daily video from Starbase the other day, seeing the grid fins on the booster getting tested before the ship was lifted. But have we seen the ship flapping?
I don't remember them doing that kind of testing. It will be interesting though if we see that in full stack configuration.
So I know we've seen it before when the ship has been like on the suborbital stands and things like that. So do you think SpaceX kind of already has the data that they need on that?
That could be the case, yes, that they already have the data for that and they don't need to test it anymore. But you never know. And as Jack will say, more data, more better. So maybe they
Yeah,
do that
but
testing.
yeah. We also have a question here from Knight asking, how big is the pulley that lifts and lowers the chopsticks, which then in turn lifts and lowers Starship? So, Chris, do we have any idea on just how big that pulley is, or is that the kind of information that isn't like to be shared?
I think the official wording is big. I have no idea about the parameters of it. It's huge, that. I like when I go on and control the cameras, which is something they let me do from time to time. I love going around the tower, and it's a huge system. Again, it's hard to get context because you're looking around in the camera. Everything is brought down to scale because of this huge rocket. And when people are there in person, the thing is absolutely massive. So in context of that, there we go, look at the pulley there. It's not going to be small. It's going to be bigger than me. Put it that way, and I'm 6 foot. So it's a big system. I have no idea what it actually is by measurement, though.
Alex, do you have any idea on how big the pulley system is?
I will hazard to guess maybe about a meter in diameter. Like the round thing there probably is about a meter, maybe more, because it's really big. Like
Yeah.
that section, that top section of the tower is very big. So might be
Yeah.
even more than that.
Yeah. For context, the width of before the ship starts tapering in, the width. Oh, there's the drone again. That's behind the ship, I think. Or in front. The ship total width is 9 meters, so you can kind of gauge the width of the ship compared to the width of the pulley there. There's some more questions coming in, but before we get to those, I am just going to quickly rattle through some more contributions and super chats. Tim asking, will Starship be painted white like the Falcon 9 when it's fully ready for production? Chris, are we going to see any paint? Or I seem to remember a certain other vehicle that got painted white, but that was stopped for mass to orbit reasons.
Yeah, yes. STS-1 and STS-2 were white external tanks. They're painted, and the legend is from the shuttle engineers was it was literally just for cosmetic purposes. And actually, STS-1, which was made completely white to look good on TV, the opposite side that was not on the camera side was quite dirty and not painted correctly. It was like me trying to paint your room. It was like a real bad job compared to a proper decorator. So it literally was. It was just like the thought, well, after STS-2, they thought, oh, there's no point painting it. We don't need it. It saves us some mass to orbit as well. Let's just not paint them. And that's why they stopped painting them. So that's the shuttle story. As far as Starship, I love how it looks. I hope they don't paint it. I know they're going to have to do the white ones for HLS moon landings and what have you, but as far as the vehicle aesthetically looks, I love the patterns of the steel. Everything looks really nice to me, so I don't think they need to doll it up anymore. I think the additions, the very minimalist additions of putting the S-24 and the little patches on the actual ship itself looks great. I really do like the look of it.
I'm gonna be a little bit more shadowy here and say that if the leeward side were white, it will be looking cool. Because black and white there, it will have very shadow vibes.
There is some I wish I could find it. Some renders out there where someone has made it into shuttle decals and shuttle renders.
Yeah.
It does look very. I must admit, it does look good. It does look good.
And I do have to say, the closest I've probably gotten to anything like Starship was when I went to the Space Centre in Leicester here in the UK. They have a blue streak out on display, which is a missile which was the first stage of a European rocket from the 70s. That is a very similar steel construction to Starship. Obviously, the steel, the type of steel has advanced with technology very much into the 21st century. But the way that is constructed in terms of like tank sections and stuff was very similar, and that felt very rugged. It felt very industrial. It felt very aerospacey. So if Starship and Super Heavy are anything like that, I really hope that design does stick around. Because even just seeing the the reinforced parts near the top of the Super Heavy booster, the stringers, I believe they're called, that it just looks so cool. I don't think it needs to be painted over, and you save a lot of mass by not painting it over, which is even though Starship will be able to take 100 metric tons up to orbit, you want every single gram that you can get. Getting to space certainly is not cheap. Going through some more super chats here and store messages. Thanks to Forrest for buying off the store and Adam for becoming a launch director member. That's one of the highest tiers of support there is. We also have a question here from Minnesota Mentat. Sorry if I got that wrong. Any guesses as to where the first catch attempt will be located? Hints were that a second set in Florida. There's a second set of chopsticks in Florida. Chris, do we think that they're going to risk 39A for the first catch attempt, or will they do that at their test facility in Boca Chica?
Not unless they're crazy. I would not even dare to try 39A's catching yet until they're absolutely confident. And will they even catch a 39A? That's the question. The chopsticks are smaller, but that's because the ones at Starbase are too long. That's the weird story behind that. But I think the chopstick's main purpose at 39A will be for stacking, and that makes sense to me. I think bringing a booster back to that historic site, especially with 39A and its needs for Crew Dragon, I can't see it. I think the first catch attempt will be at Starbase. Maybe they'll think of an alternative thing. They're building a crew axis arm at Slick 40 just as a backup in case they have a problem with 39As. And that problem would be a booster coming back sideways down back to 39A. It's an interesting thing. I think it's all down to what they're thinking forward plan wise. Again, we're a while away before they start catch attempts. And when they do, I'm absolutely sure the first one will be at Starbase.
Yeah. Thanks to Methane for 10 Red Team memberships here. Jack also for the super chat. Again, sorry we're not going to be able to read all of these out, and thank you for your support individually. But as a group, thank you to every single person who has contributed financially. It goes a very long way to helping keep the show running. And also to those of you who are just watching our videos and live streams and everything and just sharing it about, thank you so much for that as well. That helps a great deal in helping to make YouTube like us a lot more in terms of the algorithm and sharing it with more and more space nerds just like you and me. We also have some more questions coming in here. We have a question here from Paul. Alex, I don't know if you'll be able to get the answer in on this one. Why doesn't SpaceX use like water-resistant coatings for the booster to mitigate frost buildup, reducing weight at liftoff?
Well, then you have to take into account the weight of the code, because what's sort of the sort of weight penalty of putting that code in, right?
Yeah.
That probably takes into account that as well. And after all, the ice just shakes off.
I'd like to thank Daniel here for 20 Red Team memberships. Thank you very much for gifting all of those. And we have a $50 super chat here from Douglas. Thank you very much for that. And of course, we've had many more store messages and the like coming through. Thank you once again to everybody who has been contributing financially. It goes a long way. And everybody who has bought some merchandise, such as the new patch that's out, I do hope you have, when you receive them, or if you've already received them, I do hope that you enjoy them. We have a question here. From Julian, Chris. Stack then detach at this stage makes it pretty obvious, I hope. But has SpaceX officially confirmed that the FTS is now armed, or is that something we just kind of assume based on what they've done with Starship now?
Yeah, we're going to assume it. They've not said anything on Twitter. The only tweets we've had recently from SpaceX has been the Dragon CRS-27 return, which they always do tweet out the milestones for that one, so that's regular. As far as their Starship communications, they're quite hit and miss. They've had a little surge recently. We all got excited by it because we thought, well, if SpaceX are starting to tweet quite a lot about Starship, that's a good sign. And it was in the end, but they've not tweeted too much since. They do the occasional photographs, usually from the drone. The drone is certainly earning its pay as far as their Twitter photographs go, because we get a lot of those photographs. But they've not said anything about the milestones in such as like, oh, no, the FTS is now active, and they've not even done anything for full stack, to be fair. So we are assuming everything is good because we knew the destack was for activation of the FTS. So we know that they've restacked it. We know that it's active because that's why they've restacked it.
Yep. And we also have a question here from Godzilla asking, are there going to be cameras on Ship 24 and B7? Alex, do we have any word on what views we'll get in flight and perhaps some interesting Starlink ways we could be getting some telemetry downlink?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of cameras. I believe the Ring Watchers made a whole Twitter thread of all of the cameras around the vehicles and everything. Yeah, it's a whole array of cameras on the booster. I think there's like 10 up to 10 cameras on each vehicle, so it's gonna be full of cameras. Now, probably most of them are for engineering purposes, so maybe not all of them are gonna be on all of the live views that SpaceX will provide and things like that. But we will hope that at least Starlink survives during the re-entry as well, and we'll be able to see that very, very spectacular show, I will say, because that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and we've also got a couple more contributions that have just come in real quick. $20 from Elman. Thank you very much for that. And a store message here from Daniel saying, let's go. Getting very excited for Monday. And if you would like to get something off of the store for yourself, that is all available over at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. We've got our new patch that came back into stock a couple of days ago. Many of you in chat, if you're returning from earlier, many people in chat were saying earlier that the ordering had stopped working, but we've talked with the shop team and that has been restored. So you should now be able to get your patches order. You can sew it onto your hat, sew it onto your bag, put some Velcro on it. Anywhere you want to put your patches, that is where you can put that. We also have the patch design on many other items, t-shirts, mugs, jumpers and hoodies and various other items like that, all for your wearing pleasure. We also have a like a banner, a flag, if you want to pin it up on your wall, get that patch on your wall as well. And of course we also have our wonderful metal prints, many of them Starship and a couple of other rockets in there as well. Many of these pictures coming from all of the pictures coming from our photographers down in Starbase. There you go, some Falcon 9 in there. We've got the static fire as well. We've got the rocket garden. We've got SLS, everyone's favourite operating orange rocket. Dare I say everyone's favourite orange rocket?
Everyone's favourite
Chris,
orange rocket.
I got close on that one, didn't I, Chris?
You did, yeah. You did cause a riot in chat. Like, what the hell?
I was going to say, got quite close on that one. Had to quickly back up what I was talking about. But anyway, all of them and much more is available over at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Of course, it's not just those designs, many other designs. Shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Thank you to Brett very quickly for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. If you received one of them, make sure to thank Brett in chat. And we also, I'm just going through here to have a look, see if there's a question or two for us to go through. Game night talking about, Alex, is there a wheel of cheese on board? Do we know if there's any special payload for Starship?
Oh, I don't really know. Maybe they uncovered something extra during the stream. I have no idea, to be honest, because they had that surprise but for Falcon Heavy with a Roadster, but that was not revealed like on launch day. It was revealed many days before, actually 2 months before that. So if they haven't really said anything yet, maybe there's nothing else special going on this ship. But maybe at one point there will be something interesting, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. And we are also getting a question here from Ems asking, do we think the cabin, quote, area inside S24 will be pressurized? Chris, what do we know any information about, we don't really know about the payload, but do we know any information about if the ship, like the cargo compartment of the ship will be pressurized for this flight?
I don't know offhand, but I know it's sealed. That's right, Alex. They've actually closed it up. They've sealed it up. So it's possible it could be. I don't know how sealed it is, though. That's the thing. The little Pez dispenser slot they had. How could they pressurize that area, Alex? In fact, that's a question for you, I think.
They probably have their own kind of seals. They have a lot of experience building hatches for dragons. Now that we have seen CRS-27 splashdown and things like that, they do have experiences with those things on dragons. So maybe that's sort of the same kind of technology, but not as specialized for Starship. So that could be one of the ways, like just a door seal. Obviously, for this one in particular, the door itself, like it has another plate on top that has been welded on, so it has like a double reinforced seal, so to speak, because it has been closed off. It will not attempt any sort of deployment or anything like that. It's not working at all. So yeah, it might actually be easier to pressurize the payload bay that way.
Very quickly, thanks to Remy for the €55 there. That is greatly appreciated. No message, but thank you very much for the support. We also have a super chat here from Kevin. Thank you very much. And a couple of store messages as well. Everybody buying off the store, I imagine the patch. Yep, another patch. Not surprised there at all. Everyone is loving the patch. And thanks to Silverthread for becoming a Pad Wrap member. Now, Alex, we've seen the ship getting stacked this afternoon down in Starbase. What is the kind of the next step for the ship? What do we expect to see?
Yeah, so I've tried to, because the vehicles are aligned already. I've tried to look at Starbase Live because we have all the other cameras as well, and try to see if the chopsticks have settled it. It doesn't seem like it's already settled, but it's already aligned, and I'm really sure that it's gonna be settled in just a few minutes. And once that occurs, the pad will be open, and people are gonna go up to the ship QD arm. You see that sort of thing up there on the halfway part of the tower that will connect to the ship. The ship, it actually has a plate covering the vehicle interface where these umbilicals connect to. So that plate will have to be removed because it's protecting the connections and things like that for these operations. The umbilicals also have their own protections as well. Those have to be removed as well. And then once each protection is removed on ground side and vehicle side, the vehicles will be connected to the ship and hopefully for one last time before launch on Monday. But definitely do check out Starbase Live because that's going to be going live all the way.
Yeah, 24/7 coverage, live cameras of Starbase. You can go on there, watch it whenever you like, even when it's the middle of the night and we're all asleep. The teams at Starbase keep going, keep working towards the orbital flight test, which is only a couple of days now away. Everybody, potentially only a couple of days away. So thank you very much for tuning in for this commentary stream, at least. As Alex said, Starbase Live is always up if you want some live feeds. But from myself, I'm Ryan Caton, from Chris B in the commentary box, and from Alex, Jack, who was on a little bit earlier, from Kevin and Patrick in the background. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Echo down to nominal.
Flighting downside FD off. Bring in FD off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane would be igniting the flare, correct?